Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Stacy M Show. So, I am a massive fan of those Facebook groups where people are going in there and asking advice from people who are generally not qualified to answer those questions. And that happened to me last week in a Facebook group I was in, and it was a topic of a DIY will. And actually, it led to a few different conversations, but in the end, it kind of came down to a DIY will. So I thought I will do this episode on a DIY will. And I thought I would do the pros and cons of a DIY will, and then you can make the decision as to what way you go, whether you're happy with a DIY option or if you want to go see a lawyer to draft your document up. And before I forget, usually it's not just a will. So people will ring up and say, "Hi, I've been told I need a will." I'm like, okay, so what about a power of attorney and enduring guardianship? And they're like, "What? I don't know what that is. They didn't tell me that I needed that document." So you will find that it is not just a will that would be recommended. It is also a power of attorney and enduring guardianship, and only a lawyer can do that. So you may still need to see a lawyer anyway. But I have some pros and cons here. So the pros list is pretty short. The con list is definitely longer. So the pros of a DIY will. So they are usually pretty cheap. So sometimes you get what you pay for. So I've generally seen them in post offices. Is that a word? At the post office. Maybe that's better English. And news agencies. So I've seen them probably more around that $30 mark, but they're probably between $30 to $50. I have not seen them anywhere else. I've only seen them at a news agent or at the post office. So they could be elsewhere. I'm not aware. So they're pretty easy to access, and they're pretty quick. So you don't have to wait for an appointment to get a lawyer. I know that we've literally had phone calls of people, within hours of passing away. So they might still have capacity, but, they've gone downhill really, really quickly. And a doctor's like, you are probably going to pass away today. So we've definitely had those phone calls, and sometimes we're not always available to be able to do that. Sometimes we already have days full of appointments. Sometimes it's after hours, it's on a weekend. So, in that situation, that could be convenient. It might be a good starting point for you to work out your estate planning and who you want to appoint as executors and beneficiaries. So you might not be using it as your will, but you might just be wanting to have a look at it to see what the process is like. Now, I would probably suggest that you don't need to buy that for that. I know us alone have plenty of resources on our social media, through our weekly newsletters, in our database, on our website. So you probably don't need it for that purpose, but that could be an option for a pro. It may be suitable for small estates with minimal assets. And when I'm saying minimal assets, I am saying cash at bank, and I'm saying probably a few $1,000s, like maybe 10, maybe 15. It depends where those funds are. Sometimes probate will be needed. If it's such a small estate, we'll argue we're not getting probate because it's not worthwhile. And we've definitely had to do that for a couple of clients in the past because it just wasn't reasonable to seek probate on estates that are really small. But that could be another pro. So my cons are a little bit longer. But as I said, I wanted to provide you with the pros and cons so then you can make your own decision as to what suits you. So a lot of the time when we see Sorry, my English is not good today. A lot of the time when we see a DIY will, there's something usually wrong in it. So it's not dated. It's, a DIY will is essentially a fill in the blanks. So like the blanks are still blank. It's not signed or it's signed incorrectly. I don't know whether there's a guardianship or a guardian clause in there. So if you have children who need a guardian, I'm not quite sure whether that's in there, but that could be another con as well. But a lot of the time, the signing is wrong. It's just not signed, or it's just not signed how it needs to be for it to be valid. A DIY will is not going to suit the majority of people because it's not going to take into account any complex family structures. So if you have a business, if there are insurances, if there's, a lot of assets within your estate, it's not going to be suitable for that because you're not going to have the tax implications with that simple will. If you go to get tax advice on a simple will, your accountant will probably go, no, you need to go see a lawyer. So, it's not going to take into account any complex family structures or businesses or anything like that. Any tax implications won't be taken into account, and it's not flexible enough for you to try to put that in there anyway. A lot of the time when we see them, the language is really ambiguous as well. So what their wishes are not clear. Sometimes we can't read the handwriting as well because they're handwritten. Sometimes we just can't work out at all what that handwriting means. But sometimes you could read something that they have written and you can read that a number of ways. It's not clear. So, and I'm sure that's not the purpose of your will. So that's something we see as well. That can lead to then claims against the estate. So it's not suitable to exclude people in the estate. If you want to exclude people, you really need to get legal advice on that, because sometimes it's beneficial to leave them something in your will than nothing. And there are ways to go about excluding somebody in your will, and that DIY will is not an option for that. So if you've worked so hard for everything, you probably should spend the money to get that document or your will correct and in place, so your things go where you want them to go. Your kids are looked after who you want them to be looked after by. It's just, and it's going to make it easy for your family and the people who are left to administer your estate. So you've just passed away. You don't want to add another complexity or another stressful situation because you've tried to save some money with a DIY will, and it's just not going to work. It's not valid. So I mentioned it's not going to have testamentary trust or special disability trust. So if you have a child who has a disability, it's not going to cater for that. So and you can't amend it to make it counter for that as well. There's a fair bit involved with that. You are receiving no guidance on anything. So no guidance on executors, beneficiaries, what your situation is. So that can be very restricting as well and not in your best interests. Usually a DIY will is not stored how we recommend it. So if you go to a lawyer and get your will done, you will probably find they will keep it in something called safe custody. So sometimes that's physically a safe. Sometimes that's just a room in the office, or sometimes it's off-site where all your documents are held. So your will, your power of attorney, enduring guardianship, titles were a thing when we had paper titles, but that doesn't exist in New South Wales anymore, or Queensland or Victoria. I think the majority of Australia doesn't have physical titles anymore. And if you do hold it with a lawyer, just find out how they hold it. So we physically have safes. They are Chubb safes. They are not moving anywhere. They're like between 400 to 500 kilos, very, very heavy. They are fireproof, waterproof, everything proof. So, so double check where those documents are going to be held, because if there's a fire, those original documents could be gone, which is, again, why you really need to keep copies of those as well. But if you have a DIY will, usually it's just not kept where it should be. So, and sometimes people don't know that you have it either. So it's not uncommon for somebody to pass away and we receive a phone call saying, hi, such and such has passed away. Do you have their will? So very common. You don't want that occurring either. And the legal fees to contest an estate or try to get that will valid, and that might have to go down the court route depending on the issues with the will. That might cost more than what it would have cost you to get the document done in the first place. So again, that's just an extra expense, an extra delay for your family to deal with your estate. And sometimes that money is needed. Sometimes, there's insurance policies or whatever it might be are needed to pay off debt or pay for funerals, whatever it might be. So keep that in mind as well. I used to say a DIY will is better than no will, and I don't think I agree with that anymore, because I usually see more issues with them than not. So sometimes it may totally you need to get a will. If you're over the age of 18, I don't care whether you say you have no assets, you need to get a will. But so I used to say that it's better than not having one. I don't agree with that, because there's usually just more issues with them because they're not filled out correctly, and chances are you are not going to fill that document out and get a lawyer to review it. We probably wouldn't do it because it's not how we do things. It doesn't take into account all the things that we take into account, like appropriation clauses, and could be trusts and everything all in that will. So chances are you're not going to find a lawyer who's going to review that document for you. But so I don't think there's probably really any other points to point out with that. A simple will is not suitable for everybody. But you may find, so we participate in Westpac Rescue Helicopter Wills Week. We have done, I think this was our 5th year that we've done it, where you pay, it's a very reduced fee. It's a very cheap fee compared to what you'd usually pay for a will. And we donate our time, so we do that for free. We do that pro bono, and the Westpac Helicopter get that money. And you have the option of upgrading to a power of attorney and enduring guardianship if you need it. So, if funds are tight, you might want to see whether there's like a wills day that might be suitable for you. You do have online options. The pros and cons of that are probably the same as what the pros and cons that I have just gone through here. You really need a face-to-face appointment with a lawyer so they can understand your situation and advise you. You don't want to try to chat GPT it or Google it or DIY it or use an online will company who probably is not going to ask the questions that they need to ask. So you need to be satisfied. I don't think there's any other pros and cons I could probably give you, but you need to be satisfied that document is going to do what it's going to do when you pass away. And if your stomach is saying, I don't think this is going to make the cut, I don't think it's suitable, probably don't do it, and go and see a lawyer to get a will done. Now, having said that, if you have done a DIY will or any will in the past and you go to get a new will done, you need to make sure that they're aware of your old will, because sometimes that old will might be found and people don't know that you've done the new will. So we will always ask, do you have existing documents? we will always try to get them on file. So if they're with another lawyer, we'll get the client to sign an authority so they don't have to deal with them. The documents get sent to us and they go in our safe. We do not destroy any old documents. I know some people do. We don't. Sometimes the old documents can be used. So if capacity was an issue, or the person making the will was forced into changing their will by somebody. So using the example I said before, where don't worry, mum, I'll make sure that my brother and sister are looked after, and I don't want to burden them with anything else. You make me executor and beneficiary, and then I'll take care of it. So that happens. It really does, and it probably happens a little bit too often. And even when people are making the inquiry, we can tell that there's something not right. So we don't destroy old documents. I would suggest that if you do have them held with a lawyer, you specify that you do not want the old documents destroyed, because sometimes they are needed. But hopefully that helps you with making your decision in relation to whether a DIY will is suitable for you or not. If you have any questions about today's podcast, as always, I really shouldn't be doing these on weekends, should I? As always, please reach out and I'll be more than happy to answer your question. Or if that means I need to do like another podcast or something on it, I'd be more than happy to do that as well. But pretty clear where I stand on it. And it's not just because of the financial side of it. It's because I have seen it go bad, and it just causes more stress for the family. And I don't want people to have to go through that when they could have spent a little bit more extra money to make sure that it's done right. So when you do pass away, it's going to go through a lot smoother than you trying to save a couple of bucks and fill it out yourself. So any questions, as I said, please do reach out. Otherwise, thank you for listening or watching if you're watching this on YouTube, and I will catch you next time. See ya.